Good day, everyone. In the previous lesson, we learned that central to understanding human relationship is the concept of love, which is the experience so abstract yet so meaningful to many people. Did you know that our primary senses contribute to our experience of human sexuality? You will learn more of that as we go through our lesson for today, which is about sex and senses. Even before we enter primary school, we were taught by our parents that we have five bodily organs that corresponds to our primary senses, which we use to discover, explore, and experience the world around us. These bodily organs are the eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin, muscles, and joints. Our eyes enables our sense of sight, so that we are able to see visual stimuli in the environment, such as color, size, and shape. Our nose enables our sense of smell, so that we are able to experience scent. Our ears allow us to sense of hearing, so that we are able to experience sounds of varying tones, pitches, and volume. Our tongue is covered with taste buds that allow us sense of taste, so that we are able to experience the taste like the saltness, sweetness, bitterness of our food and the objects we put in our mouth. Then we have sensory reception in our skin, muscles, and joints, which allow us the sense of touch or feeling, so that we are able to have tactile experiences like heat or its absence, various texture, and various physical pressure. These five senses comprise our sensorium, which is the totality of our sensory experience and perception. While we receive information from our environment through the senses, our brain has the ability to organize and interpret those numerous stimuli into meaningful ideas that are useful for our choices and useful also for our behavior. Let's move on to human affect and the senses. Interestingly, while human beings are hailed as rational beings who are constantly making choices and are behaving through a set of rational choices made from higher order thinking such as evaluating, judging, and many more, it is hypothesized that our affect, such as emotions and feelings, actually play a major role in our behaviors. Affective primacy hypothesis. This is postulated by Robert Sazong in 1980. He stated that in many cases, cognitive processing plays a lesser role compared to our emotional responses in eliciting behavior. As a result of this theory, our emotions take precedence by nature, owing to the fact that the limbic system is the only one that processes and modulates them. Now, what is the limbic system? The limbic system is the emotional part of our brain, which is more primitive compared to the ones responsible for higher order thinking. This is where the sensorium and the human affect meets. Here, it will help us to think of a particular case. Imagine that you are walking in the woods with your friends when all of a sudden a venomous snake drops down in front of you. How will you respond to the situation? As part of our mechanisms for evolution, humans like us have three primary emotional responses. These are fight, flight, or freeze. A fight response is when we face adverse or dangerous stimuli squarely. This would mean grabbing the nearest solid object in the environment and throwing it to the snake to shoo the snake away. A flight response is when we move away from the adverse or dangerous stimuli. This would mean running away from the place, finding a new route where the snake cannot find you. A freeze response, on the other hand, is when you are startled and are unable to make a choice, thus are unable to move. Sometimes the freeze response can also be used to buy time, so you can calculate the advantages and disadvantages of your choice. Shall you fight the snake or fly away from the sea? So in all three emotional response, there is a requirement. We should be able to sense the environment, organize the stimuli we receive, and interpret the stimuli so we can make a choice and corresponding action. We will not be able to arrive at the behavior if not through our senses. This makes our sensorium a necessary component of the emotional response arc.
Senses and sexuality. Having provided an overview on how affect the sensorium and the brain's limbic system coordinate, we are now ready to discuss the various senses play in the human sexual response. Visual experience. Humans are predominantly visual. Visual experience are site visits that incorporate memorable encounters and educational learning, thereby providing a robust experience that will live on in the individual long after they have lost their eyesight. Mankind has always been interested in the way people perceived the world, and this has become one of the reasons why visual is one of the important aspects for senses and sexuality. Visual culture is an essential element in society. So, visual culture is an essential element in society, for our visual helps us to know the different things around us. Our visual helps us to keep updated, especially nowadays where there are a lot of things happening, not even in the society, but also around the world. So, our visual helps us to be focused on what is ahead of us. That is why it is only appropriate to utilize these visual cues, since visual memory is deemed superior to other forms. It is assumed that, at the average, when realities are presented visually, we tend to remember them and easily retrieve them from our memory. Our language has a visual component. Our societies highly rely on visual culture to create meaning and convey information. For instance, our language has a visual component, as we observed from writing systems. Those signs that we can see everywhere we go is what we call the language of a visual component. Those signage helps us to know what to do and where to go. Walking down the streets. So, walking down the streets, you will see a lot of signs which directs you what to do or not to do. You will see signages placed on business establishments to tell you where to go and buy the things you want, as for medical help or even going to school. There are also signs where we can see different directions, especially if we are not familiar with the place. We must always look for a clue for the direction where we up to. So, studies have explored gender differences in visual stimuli and sexual arousal. So, just like for example, men respond more to visual stimuli than women. Men tend to be influenced by the sex of the actors in a sexual scenario. For instance, the study of Robert Rowland, 2007, found that men respond more to visual sexual stimuli. This only means that men are more aggressive sexually, that even just watching some light porns or sex tapes, they become aroused on what they see, even when it's just on a tape or in the phones. Since there are some sites where they offer different sex tapes, according to research, men are more on to visit those kind of sites. So this picture shows that when confronted by an intimate interaction, men would tend to be rather influenced by visual cues, just like what the picture shows. Like, men tend to be attracted more on how a person looks physically or what the other person is wearing. The study of Rupp and Wallen 2007 found that women were more influenced by context, although women are responsive also to the sexual content of a visual stimuli. This means that when confronted by an intimate interaction, women tend to be rather influenced by the nature of relationship they have with another person. So just like for example in this picture, the women have a deep thought about their relationship. So this only means that the person he was thinking is someone whom she deeply know and she can trust. For this person holds on to the intimate relationship they had. So the study of Land 1994 and and Johnson 2007 established that either gender respond more intensely on materials filmed and chosen by people of similar gender. The study explored how heterosexual men and women would respond to female filmed and male filmed videos. So this picture shows that women and men differ in strategies of viewing sexual stimuli. Women tend to pay more attention to contextual and non-sexual cues than men and thus are putting prime on subjective valuing of circumstances.
Hello everyone, so I am Honeybee Macaranas. So for the continuation, we have olfactory experience. So olfactory is relating to smell or the sense of smell. Olfaction in non-human animals, which are believed to be microscopic organisms or in organisms having a greater sense of smell. So these have been an interest among psychologists since 1950s. On the other hand, humans and apes are generally believed to be microscopic or lesser levels of olfactions compared to their non-apes counterparts. So, however, recent studies in the field of human sexuality shows that while we humans have a limited olfactions, then sense of smell may play an important part in our sexual response. So a study by Mascarella, Arantes, and Conisel in 2011 explored on the preferred scent among heterosexual and homosexual males and females. So what is heterosexual and homosexual? So when we say heterosexual, or people often use the term straight, these are the people who are sexually or romantically attracted to people of the opposite sex, like heterosexual male are attracted to women and heterosexual women are sexually or romantically attracted to men, while homosexual are the people who are attracted to their same sex, like girls are attracted to girls and then boys to boys. The study found that heterosexual females who participated in their study tend to like wearing floral sweet scent, but wanted to have musky spicy scent to be worn by their partners. And heterosexual males and homosexual females wanted to have a musky spicy scent on themselves and like their partners wear floral sweet scent. On the other hand, homosexual males wanted musky spicy for themselves and also for their partners. So this is the example figure of preferred scent among heterosexual and homosexual males and females. How human olfaction influences sexuality. So scientists have tried to explain how human olfaction influences sexuality. They identified through two possibilities. So first is through what is referred to as signature odor, the unique way that each individual smells, which is associated with the major histocompatibility complex, a group of genes that code for proteins found on the surfaces of cells that help the immune system recognize foreign substances. So one of the famous studies about major histocompatibility complex is the sweaty t-shirt experiment. So in this experiment, individuals tend to be attracted to other people with different set of MHC genes. So the second one is through what is referred to as pheromones. So substances putatively or supposedly exerted by our glands which signals mode and affect social behaviors. The humans' interest in pheromones, on the other hand, has been present since the early 1930s when an entomologist suggested that there are hormones emitted outwards the body, which they called it ectohormones. And then in a few decades, the term was replaced or renamed with the word pheromones, and then eventually the concept was generalized to be true also to mammals. In 1970s, McClintock effect or menstrual synchrony, girls in the same dorm usually have menstruation nearly at the same time, and it was thought to be due to pheromones. This culminated in the 1980s when the presence of a human pheromones was hypothesized. What do scientists think human pheromones do? So it is thought to act as attractants, a substance that attracts something of the opposite sex, and then repellents of the same sex, stabilizer of mother-infant bond, and modulators of menstrual cycles. So some chemical thought to be human hormones are androstenedione, a testosterone-like substance found in male sweat, saliva, and urine, and then estradiol, an estrogen like found in female urine. And lastly is 1-perylene, a substance found in human semen, pubic sweat, and smegma. According to Wessel 2017, modern studies or experiments could not replicate or have been unable to reproduce what was thought to be the impact or effect of putative pheromones on social behaviors. So next is we have tactile experience. So touch is observed to be an element of intimacy. So it is an act or reaction such as expression of feelings, including close friendship, romantic love, or sexual attraction between the people. So our body is covered in the skin, often referred to as the largest bodily organ. So our skin is totally accounts for 16 to 20% of our body weight. It is a sensitive organ as every square inch of it houses more than 1,000 of nerve endings. So touch hold means in social interaction, particularly intimate ones, they are only people who we allow to touch us, and they are only part of our body we allow people to touch. So touching, just like any other behavior, may also be governed by social norms. As a sensation, touch has 3 elements. So first, we have tactile element. So this element pertains to the experience related to the object being felt or having a sense of touch through the skin. Next is thermal element. So it refers to the perception of temperature of object in contact with the skin, if it is warm or cold. And lastly, we have vibrational element. So the question of this is the pressure of the touch strong or weak? Is the sensation moving and pulsating? and stationary. So the function of this is to make us aware of different frequencies of external stimuli. So different parts of human body also have different threshold of tactile experience relative to the object experience. So we have here primary erogenous zones and secondary erogenous zones. So in primary we have mouth, anus, genitals, and nipples. So these parts are the very sensitive to touch. And then the secondary are back, cheek, neck, and then buttocks. So as they are also sensitive to touch but only supportive of the primary zones in eliciting or obtaining response. So the erogenous zones are areas of the body involved in the reproductive and sexual act. So human touch is essential in social bonds. We only give people we trust the right to have tactile contact with us. It is always consensual act to touch and be touched. So when we touch, our body produces a hormone called oxytocin. So it is referred to as the love hormone. It is believed to influence tribal behaviors and maternal bonding. Oxytocin is observed to be produced in vast amount during nipple stimulation, such as when a mother suckles her newly born. In intimate relationship, touch is suggested to be one of the love languages. A person whose love languages is touch tend to give and receive tactile stimulation to and from others through holding, hugging, and other forms of physical connection.
Now let's proceed to auditory experience. When we say auditory, it concerns about the hearing or listening. Social interactions are also auditory processes. It is an auditory process because whenever we are with our peers or we are with our friends and we have conversations with them, we always have to hear what they are saying and to listen to them. So that's why it is an auditory process. Just like, for example, the model of communication. Someone is a speaker and then the other end of the message, the listener hears what the speaker is saying, internalizes it, decodes it, and interprets it. So that's why in social interactions, especially in having conversation with your friends, it is an auditory process. Sexual activities are also a verbal communication process because some people during sexual activities, they still converse and they have that verbal communication between those people. And this verbal communication or verbal process is called the verbal erotic encourage. So for example, we have I love you and I miss you. So there are people when they're having sexual activity, they like to hear these words from their partner. It adds pleasure to them, it makes them feel safe, and this is also a form of a love language, the affirmation. The senses are windows to our consciousness. It is true that the senses are windows to our consciousness because through the use of senses, we're able to feel, we're able to hear and to listen, and it affects our mood, it affects our behavior. So that's why it is true that the senses are windows to our consciousness. Before we end this topic, let us have a quick recap of what we discussed. First, we have visual experience. This concerns about the visual or what we see. For men, they are more aroused and excited when they see an intimate interaction. And for women, they're not just concerned about what they see, but they are also concerned about the context. They are concerned whether the person they're having sexual activity with is someone that they know and someone that they can trust. Next is olfactory experience. This concerns about the smell. We all have our unique and different smell, and this is what we call signature odor. There are a lot of people who can be attracted to someone because of their natural smell. Next is tactile experience. This is the most sensitive sense, and also we do not allow anyone to touch us unless it's our friend or it is someone that we're having an intimate relationship with. For tactile experience, we allow our friends to touch us, but limited only. And with our intimate relationship, there should always be consent. And there are also what we call primary erogenous zones and secondary erogenous zones. For the primary erogenous zone, it includes the mouth, anus, genitals, and the nipples. These are the most sensitive part of the body. And for the secondary erogenous zones, this includes the back, neck, buttocks, and the cheeks. These parts are also sensitive, but it is not as sensitive as the primary erogenous zones. And lastly, the auditory experience. This concerns about what we hear or what we listen to. So there are people who are engaged in sexual activities. They like to hear verbal erotic encouragement. For example, I love you and I miss you. So that is all for this lesson, Sex and Senses. Thank you so much.